Holding your money on FTX, fucking stupid. Holding your money in the current financial system, whether that be a pension, whether it be stocks, whether it be money in a bank account, same thing. They're gonna go bust, and when they go bust, the insiders get all the money out that's left out the back, and you're left holding the bag. And guess what? The bag's empty.
Boom, boom, here it is. This is pod number 77. You know what I'm talking about. The world's most bullish podcast, The 4Bs, brought to you by Mr. All-In, a.k.a. the $1 Trillion Man, Dr. Evil 10%, a.k.a. the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, a.k.a. the Excellence of Execution, and surprise, surprise, another week without Mrs. No-Show. Still, Mrs. No-Show. What's happening?
But fuck her. What are we talking about this week? We thought we'd just throw in, actually tell people what they're discussing or what we're going to discuss this week instead of just leaving it to like you to figure it out. So of course we've got the FTX update. Of course we have SBF actually showed up at the Elites event. He also ran into CoffeeZilla a couple of times. We're going to discuss what happened all there. But in Bitcoin-related news, we had the biggest downward difficulty adjustment since China banned it last year. So what do we think there? We've got a new ledger coming out by an ex-Apple engineer. Of course, we've got some inflation weekly. We've got Janet Yellen chatting some shit. We've got some UK news on that. Got a great FUD of the week. The ECB have a fantastic blog out this week. Complete and utter shite. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Have some fun there.
We got a little bit of a shitcoin corner about Apple blocking Coinbase, what who cares? And then we got Brazil adopting Bitcoin to finish off. So another jam-packed week. And good thing is not too much FTX, just first couple of stories. Hopefully we can weed him out completely, but he's still there.
Gift that keeps on giving. But yeah, happy to dive straight in with our first story.
And it's good old Sam, isn't it? So the event that we've talked about, was he going to show up? Was he not? It was going to be it was the day after we recorded last week, was going to be the big, was he going to show up? People didn't think he was. All we'd seen of him up until now was a couple of DMs to a Vox reporter. But no, he did. He showed up for a proper interview with the New York Times. And what do you think? My personal view is I think he played the bundling kind of idiot very well. Every time he got pressed on a question, he just went, oh, I didn't have that information. I don't know. That was someone else. And it's very interesting, I think, how he's rebranding himself. Because if you go back a month ago, this was the smartest kid in the world, the fastest guy to get to a billionaire since Mark Zuckerberg. He was the next Zuckerberg, basically a robot, genius, photographic memory, can code like no one before, can remember information, can trade, can do the lot. He is a machine.
He said he couldn't code.
I know, exactly.
I wanted to pull this up as well. The minute you said that.
Yeah, because this is the thing, right? This is, I was probably tricked by it because that was my impression of him before. Now he's being interviewed. I can't code. I have no clue what the code does. That's someone else. And about the trading, yeah, I don't know. My main job was risk management, and I didn't do that. I didn't spend any time on it. Now he's a bundling idiot. It's a complete rebrand because
I was going to say they had about 8 people to start up FTX, and when you're in a team of 8 on something which is a tech company, you have to be able to code.
Yeah.
I would imagine so.
You're either the money and you're not really involved, or you're coding just like everyone else. And I figured that he was always a coder, but on this one, so it's New York Times event. So I was just loading it up. Comments are off. And, that's the first which I scroll for when I load it up. I thought I'll listen to it while I'm doing some tasks, and a
lot of their videos, they take the comments off
I'll read the comments.
Just this one.
And so you've got 629,000 views. How many likes? So you think likes are on that kind of video, they're going to be quite high. 7.7 thousand, so 7,700. So how many dislikes and how many people just ignored it? I mean, also those comments as well. You're kind of thinking they're just hiding. Everyone, like, you're saying how he's a bumbling idiot, but I felt the interviewer didn't really turn the screw on him.
No. Oh,
No.
it was relatively softball questions.
Yeah, I mean, he tried, and obviously he was fairly respectable, but ultimately he works for, the newspaper that is giving him a half-decent article because no doubt they've been greased in terms of their palms earlier on. And
I don't know if it's greased or it's just because they are part of a religion of the Democrats.
Yeah, and also
well
like they want to have these guys back, don't they?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like he like his challenging questions, like he did ask a few challenging questions.
He did.
But the problem is, it's only a challenging question if you don't let him just fob you off. And that's what Sam did numerous times. He asked a challenging question, like, where were the funds? Like, how did you lose 10 billion? Like, where can you break this down? And he just went on a little 2-minute bumbling non-answer. And instead of going, you didn't answer my question there. Can we break this down? Like, how much did you lose first? Is it 1 billion or 10? No one even knows the amount still. Let's just nail him down on the amount as the CEO. Like, you don't tell me you don't know how much money you have lost. But he never did that. He never went back.
It was not only how much have you lost, how much was the commingling, like the operations of the entire company, like when did you start? All of this. It was just as though he had amnesia all of a sudden, wasn't it?
So in the kind of like when Sam was interviewing, he said he was asked whether he's using FTT, so the FTX token, as collateral. And when asked if he was marking them correctly, he said, "Oh, I don't think I was doing it the right way." And then kind of just sidestepped on, like, I'm just a CEO. It was just, it was like a bit pathetic. Whereas then you got, any kind of journalist would have been like, bump, answer it. Then he answered it, bump, down a level, bump, bump. And it would absolutely nailed him on that point. Whereas everyone who's interviewed him has just, give him an early, easy ride.
Yeah.
Well, we start off easy, actually, to be fair. As in, if we rank it this way, and obviously we're going to come on to these stories a little bit later on, but Tiffany, isn't it Tiffany Fong? She asked him some challenging questions, but really, CoffeeZilla is the person that's asking him the real key killer questions and being quite direct with it as well.
Well, he's a subject matter expert, and he kind of, I suppose he understands the scams because it's what he spends his time on. So, yeah, correct. I think it's a good point. But kind of going back to this one with New York Times events, he was asked, was he using BlockFi to keep FTX going? I guess. Was his answer. For me, that kind of answer is, well, it's fraud, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, he's still being non-committal. It's not a yes, is it? I guess, maybe.
But I guess, in a court of law, surely that goes, you are guilty of it now. That's enough to surely charge. And then asked about whether he thought he'd be criminal liable, said, I don't think so.
Well, he's going down the route of, well, if I didn't know what I was doing, then there was no mens rea behind the actions of what I've actually committed. But ultimately, this guy is a super smart guy. Let's not be fooled by this new act that he's putting on. Ultimately, you do not get to that level so quickly and impress the likes of Sequoia and BlackRock and whoever else decided to, give them their money to invest with, because he had them all.
I just think it's a giant conspiracy theory. Like, I just can't get my head around how he can't be in prison already, the trial starting. And you're talking about Sequoia, or what their names are, BlackRock.
Yeah.
He didn't have presentations. He didn't have the financials. He didn't have anything. So it's like, BlackRock don't take bribes. They don't need to take bribes. So why are BlackRock recommending someone like this? And that's why I'm kind of keeps on going back to, this is some kind of like, conspiracy theory, but it's like, what is the intended outcome? So we've got what else here? So they asked him about going to the US, and this is one which I found interesting. And he seemed nervous around that question. And it's just kind of like, but then I was thinking, he's not going to get arrested, but everyone's going to be pushing for him to be arrested, or someone has lost $1,300,000 or whatever it is. They're going to try and kill him.
Yeah, he knows he can't walk about in New York, or you can't walk around in a busy city in America. There'll be someone that would recognize him and want to kick shit out of him.
Well, it's not just kick the shit out. I think it's kill.
Yeah. That's
I mean, ultimately, some people who have lost their life savings, so they've got nothing else to live for.
Yeah, because we know he's got like over £1 billion net wealth still, even with the bankruptcy, like the money which he's siphoned out. I mean, he talked about that, when the money was being transferred out, I was cut off. And it's just like...
Oh, yeah, I was cut off from those systems. I actually thought today, because... this is a little bit disingenuous. I knew, as we may have talked about on the show previously, that the senior compliance officer at FTX...
Who didn't invite you to an orgy?
She didn't, no. And so I've got a number, and I'm going to use the number after a month. So I'm going to call tomorrow, so I may be able to give you some direct updates, straight from the horse's mouth. And I will simply say, I didn't feel like it was appropriate immediately calling you after the aftermath. But now time's settled, a few things have come out.
I'd imagine she's changed the number by now.
Well, I've been looking.
So people like you don't phone her.
Well, yes. Let's see. If not, I'll message on LinkedIn, and hey, we never know. We had a half decent report, so we'll see. We get an exclusive.
Because the next interview we've got is much better, I think. Yeah. It's Sam, and he's talking to the Vox reporter. So she again, she talks to CoffeeZilla, and she doesn't really know why he's replying to her. And it turns out that Tiffany Fong, she actually was one of the first to expose that Celsius had gone bankrupt. Someone had leaked. She lost a load of money on Celsius, apparently. She was a low-level journalist, not even necessarily in crypto or anything.
She wasn't, no. It was funny, this, wasn't it? That she wasn't even in crypto until July.
Yeah. So then she just posted that she'd put a load of money into Celsius, probably just before it went down. So it really sucks for her. So she put a load of money in, lost it all, was tweeting about Celsius sucks. And then someone sent her a load of internal documents for Celsius, and proving that they were bankrupt even when they stopped withdrawals. So she then broke that story and broke the Celsius are bankrupt story. And that apparently got Sam to follow her, which is interesting because he was probably bankrupt at the same time. So he follows her. And then obviously FTX goes bust a month later. So she just says, I'm just going to shoot my shot and see if Sam replies, and just went, hey, Sam, fancy a chat? And obviously he replies to some DMs and jumps on this call, which...
Was she also the messages? Was that Vox?
Yeah, she's the messenger, and she then managed to get a call with him as well.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was a link, but
she's pretty hot. It's like, she slid up into his DMs, but maybe when she thought he was, still this multi-billionaire, and he, equally responded back as well.
She doesn't seem his type.
Oh, no. No, well, the funny thing is, like,
you're a billionaire, you're sexy to everyone, aren't you, though?
No, I mean, she doesn't seem his type.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen Caroline?
Oh, yeah, true.
But it's weird because he even gets out, or she asks him, why did you reply to me? Like, why me? And you just went, I'm just really good. I have a sixth sense about these things. And I just think you get it. And And obviously she publishes fucking everything. And then he's asked later, I think weirdly in the New York article, going, what was all those messages to Vox about? And he went, yeah, I didn't think they'd go public. Which clearly shows that his sixth sense sucks. Like, he just saw a pretty girl in the DMs. He's like, I know out the big man, to this Tiffany Fong, and maybe I'll get laid at some point. And all she was doing is like screenshot, 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 publish.
Record, exactly, yeah.
But it's also like her style. Like, I know she's not a subject matter expert, so she couldn't really dig down. But it's like she's just, like the Louis Theroux, it's like unassuming. Like, I think that's how she drew him into saying certain things. Like, she didn't even seem like she was asking much, but the kind of information which she came out with, like, it was like Louis Theroux, unassuming, but actually going deep down and pulling something. And he just doesn't realize what he's saying at times, but he could just be off his face on something.
Louis Theroux is good at that, but he knows exactly what he's doing when he does it, whereas she's just unwittingly doing it.
Well, I don't know her record. I've never, knowingly read anything by her, and it just seemed like it was the same style.
It's Columbo as well, isn't it? It's the bundling guy that's like, he's asking some questions. Like, just one more thing, and that's the one that you hang yourself on. And she was doing that, and the question I liked the best, at least with Sam's answer anyway, was what was he doing with prioritizing the Bahamian withdrawals? Because he said the regulator told him to do it, yet the regulators come out and said, no, we didn't. What's happened there? And Sam just goes through it and goes, yeah, I think I kind of messed up a bit on that. I did email them in the morning about that, but they didn't reply. So I probably shouldn't have said that they'd authorized it. But in reality, you don't want to run a big, successful business and have a lot of angry people on the island coming after you. It's hard to run a business like that. So we prioritize those withdrawals. He literally, in that answer, admitted there's no regulation in the Bahamas to release funds to locals. And the reason he did it was to stop himself being killed by people in the Bahamas coming at him. So he basically took a load of money out early, paid off people that are local to make sure he's safe, and then and fuck everyone else. That on its own is huge amounts of fraud, because the company was bankrupt at this point. So just that one answer.
But I was going to say, that's an admission again.
Yeah, it's 10 years.
It's got to be more than just 10 years.
But that's just for that one thing. That's just 10 for that.
Yeah, but just that
like
one thing.
He's done another 17, so you can have 170 when it comes to it.
We'll go through all of those in a row.
Some of the things which he talked about, he claims he donated to the Republicans, but he did it
anonymously.
Some privacy law which allows him. But it's like, well, why did you admit to donating to the Democrats? Because if you were greasing the palms on both sides, you wouldn't want to both know, would you? So it's highly unlikely he donated to the Republicans, or it's potentially a lot lower sum, because he was very pro-Democrats because he was playing to their tune.
Yeah. Would you see Elon's theory on that? His theory was he thinks he donated more than $1 billion to the Democrats. He just did 40 million in public and the rest private.
I think it's when you talk about $1 billion, I think I know where Elon's getting it, but I think that's part of the money laundering, which we talked about a couple of episodes ago. The fact that he's laundering money from the government to Ukraine. Oh, let's give the poor Ukrainians, wash back into donations, private and public. I think that's what Elon's half on there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But let's also not forget that some of the money was shadow money as well. So some was publicly recorded, others it was, cash under the table.
But if the law allows it, why do you do it? Because the Democrats know you donated. Why do the Republicans and the public need to know?
Yeah. His answer was, obviously it feeds back into his woke thing, which was, it's fine donating to the Democrats because everyone just goes, well, yeah, that's a good thing to do. But if you donate to the Republicans, why are you being so racist? Why are you a Nazi? So that's and that's the most believable excuse, to be fair. If I was going to try and buy public like politicians' favor and I got 50 million for both, I would do the Democratic Party public and I'd do the Republican private. So the guys inside know, but I wouldn't want the public to know that I donated, because it's, they're going to go, why are you being a racist then?
Yeah, grease and wheels. He did say he wanted to influence, so he admitted that. So it's a lobbying, which we talked about, which is ultimately bribing, which, should be outright illegal. Like, you shouldn't be able to donate to these parties like that. But moving on from there, another thing which she said was about this backdoor. So she asked him about the backdoor into the system. And because she put an emphasis on you, he was like, me? And he's like, I can't code. I didn't put a backdoor in, and kind of sidestepped it because it's actually his CTO who did it. So it wasn't him. And it allowed him to kind of go, not me.
Yeah. If you notice,
You know where the CTO is?
Yeah, Gary Wang or something.
Yeah. Do we know where he is as well, or is he holed up in the Bahamas too?
I'd imagine because Sam's paid everyone off. If I was in FTX right now and was based in Bahamas before, that's where I'd be staying. Everyone's the police and government and everyone that matters is paid off. They're all happy. They got no beef. You know, if anything,
Caroline got out abroad, didn't she? But early.
She's in America now. It's rumored she's in America now.
Yeah, I saw that picture.
She's snapped in a coffee shop in America, in New York as well. Which is
a coffee shop.
Yeah, she's a few streets up from the SEC. So people have been rumored that is she ratting on Sam? Is she trying to get a plea bargain?
I'd say she's got no choice if this was normal. But if it was normal, they'd already have SBF in custody.
Yeah, the thing is, it's weird, right? Because another thing that Sam came out in this interview was he reiterated again that the FTX US is solvent, and if needed, all withdrawals could be paid now. So now suddenly you have, and it's great because it buys in time, because now you're like, well, it seems to be the US are the police force of the world, right? They're the ones that seem to be allowed just to go and arrest anyone. It doesn't matter whether you're in the Bahamas or not. They're just allowed to come get you, which is weird. But so everyone's waiting for the US to prosecute him, but he's been clever and split out FTX International and FTX US. He's admitted FTX International bankrupt, no money left, go fuck yourself. But he claims that the US arm is solvent. And if he was in charge of it still, he would open withdrawals and everyone could take their money out. So now, if you are a US prosecutor, what are you prosecuting him for right now? Because the US citizens, according to him, nothing's happened yet.
But I'm sure when he said that they filed for bankruptcy, at that point, then they weren't able to make everybody whole, even though then he went back and said, I then had 4 billion. He said someone was going to give them money, like $4 billion worth, to continue the business even after all of this.
Yeah, well, that was the whole FTX business. That
yes, yeah,
he's claiming. He's still claiming in his most recent interviews on here that FTX in US is solvent. So he's gone the full way. He said it was solvent, then they declared bankruptcy.
Yeah,
and then now he's going, no, it's still solvent. And I think, again, he's very clever with his words. And by solvent, he probably means, it's got a load of FTT token or some bullshit. And they know that they sell.
What's wrong with FTT tokens? They got utility. It's a buy and burn and shit. And it's great because it has utility.
I know, buy and burn shit. Yeah.
But it's interesting to look. So look at FTT. It was $51 at its peak when they started having issues. It's $1.43 when I checked. Was it yesterday? So the solvency probably isn't there at all. But then again, it depends how many tokens he's got, because I think it was Copyzilla pointed out that he sold a small percentage of those FTTs because it's a limited release, and people have gone, it's $51 or $1.43. But in fact, that's only 5 or 10 or 30% of the actual stack. And he's got 70% of it sitting over here. So he's gone, because it's been selling for 51. Therefore, I'm worth, we're solvent because I'm worth 50 billion. And that's kind of like the issue with
a buyer on the other side, right?
Well, but he sold a few. So that's how it's, it's literally a fiat Ponzi system, where you're coming up with the assets are worth this because of limited amounts. And I suppose this is kind of my point, is leading towards Bitcoin. It's why you have that assurance around Bitcoin. How many Bitcoins will there be? 21 million. How many are there currently? What are we up to about? Is it 19 million or so?
Yeah.
Just over, yeah.
Yeah, so 19 million. So we know where we are. Like, there's a recorded amount. Whereas with these kind of shit coins, how many are there? Well, I think there's about this. I think, because that's what SBF said. How many will there be? And therefore, how can you have value?
In reality, anyone saying, "Oh, the total supply of FTT is X," it is guessing. The only person that really knows is SPF. He knows, and who knows? He could have changed it 10 minutes ago.
He could have been sliding
million.
ledgers with FTT and strippers' asses.
Exactly. And the problem he's got is obviously FTT token now. If he tries to sell any amount of volume of that, like, literally who is buying it? There's no one on the other side of that trade.
He doesn't need to. Like, he's out the game. He's got over $1 billion net worth. He's got Robin Hood stock. He's got a property empire, and he's probably got investments. He's probably got gold. He's probably got Bitcoin.
Properties, you name it,
which we don't know about. It could be a lot more. Like, he could have siphoned half of that net worth. Sorry, not the net worth, the value out of FTX when no one really knew.
When they went bankrupt, there was like 1.1 Bitcoin in there. The rest of it was paper wrapped Bitcoin. So people did deposit Bitcoin onto that platform. Where is it? Well, it's interesting that that's the token that's missing. Shit tons of FTT was left. But there's no fucking Bitcoin there.
What are you trying to say? What's wrong with FTT?
Here's a live update, by the way. So as we speak right now, the total Bitcoin in existence is 90,226,150, meaning that 91.553% of all Bitcoins have been issued. Meaning that there's 1,773,850 Bitcoins left to be mined at 900 Bitcoins per day.
So for the listeners, what you're saying is that Bitcoin is in short supply. You better buy some quick.
Exactly.
All I heard was stack sats. It's time running out. But yeah, let's just finish off on fucking Sam. I heard someone rebranded him Scam, Bankman, Fraud. So I'm calling him that now. But so finally, SPF again, he seems to be doing this apology tour. Everyone's like letting him off quite easy. So he goes into some shitcoin kind of chat on Twitter Spaces. But who joins? Mr. CoffeeZilla himself. And obviously the host probably accidentally made him speaker. And he just goes in on Sam, really starts drilling him. But the problem is Sam's just so good at deflecting, because he goes, right, you've said that Alameda will the problem. Like, they seem to be the entire problem. 10 billion has just disappeared because of their trading. But come on, it can't be more than $1 billion. That's what their position was or something. Where's the rest? And then Sam just ums and ahs and goes, I think it was more. They had some futures trading. I think we gave him a loan. And Coffee just keeps drilling him, going, well, how much then? Why did you let that happen? And he just goes, I didn't notice it. I don't really know the amount. I don't have the data in front of me. You go, Sam, like, you were CEO a week ago of this company. Don't tell me just because you've had your email switched off now, you can't remember the most important partner at FTX. You can't remember how much money you loaned them. And
he just a big number too, right?
Exactly. Like, knowing whether it's 1 billion or 10 is a difference between life and death for FTX. You fucking knew, Sam. Don't lie.
Yeah.
And in reality, he knows exactly what the number is. He also knows what number he was stealing, what number was over here, what number was over there, and when he took it. He knows all that information. But even though CoffeeZilla proper didn't let him off the hook, kept drilling him for a good 20 minutes, Sam didn't admit anything, because I think he's very good. He's good when he's being confronted, because he just locks down. Whereas with Tiffany Fong, she was a bit bumbling and didn't really know what she was talking about. So he spills his guts by accident against someone like her. But with Coffee, a proper journalist who doesn't want to let him off the hook, he didn't let out a single thing. I listened to the 20 minutes and he's like, Sam didn't say a word. Really. He just went, dunno, maybe, haven't got the data. We shrug his shoulders. But at least someone had a go at him, which was refreshing. But we didn't learn anything.
I was going to say, what else is refreshing and very unique as well is that most of these people, you never see them again. They take your money and run, never to be seen. Whereas he's doing an interview here, popping up on Twitter Spaces there. During the Michael Saylor and Patrick B. David interview. Did you hear him talk about this guy called Zhao Lo? I'd never come across this guy before, but he had done something very similar in Malaysia. So JHOLOW.
Oh yeah.
He's a fugitive on the run and took billions. And also, again, as I said, never heard of him before, but he paid for the Wolf of Wall Street film to be made. And the irony of that. And ultimately, Sam is out there just trying to think that he can get away with it with these lame excuses as and when he pleases, and he's deluded.
Well, the problem is, I think I'm not sure he is deluded. I think he knows he will get away with it because he's already paid everyone off, and that's the thing. It comes back to the conspiracy, which is potentially the reason why he's so confident is FTX launched the same day as the Biden campaign. So whether that's just a coincidence or not, but the conspiracy is he is a Trojan horse. He was funded by the WEF and the Democratic Party and all the people that want to see Bitcoin fail. They funded him to the point where he wasn't even trying. He was playing computer games, raising billion-dollar valuations, and they're just throwing money at him. He's not answering questions. He hasn't got any company structure, but they're throwing money at him because he's a Trojan horse. So all the money he raised wasn't real money. They wanted him to get massive. They let him put his brand fucking everywhere, so people trusted it. They built this guy up into a genius, and really he's an incompetent idiot, but people believed the marketing. And then he got a load of assets in, and then he just stole it and walked away. And now he's doing an apology tour that is just, it was all just a big accident. And then I think he gets away with it because he was paid to do this. So that's why, like, if he was just an out and out scammer, yeah, people come in, they make a big splash, they make a lot of money, then they fucking disappear. They go. I always love the shitcoin one that just
sense. And it's especially with not getting arrested bit by now.
And not even having a serious interview with someone. Like the fact he is doing interviews is just, why is he so confident? Why does he keep messing up and literally implicating himself in more and more crimes? He just knows he's not going to get charged with any of them.
Yeah.
Like every interview he does, he admits another 10-year sentence crime. You go, every 10 minutes, you add another 10 years to the sentence. What are you doing? But I just think he doesn't care because he's like, nah, it's fine. The US people that matter are paid off. The Bahamas people that matter are paid off. Everyone else, you don't matter. You can't come get me. I'm safe.
By doing the interviews, however, has he on purpose jeopardized the trial being an unfair trial because he said things when not on oath? So again, intentionally by doing so. So if therefore it's very difficult for them to use the evidence of what he's actually said to be admissible in court.
No, normally, that's why lawyers tell you not to say anything, because every single interview he's doing, every answer he's saying and answering to these questions, they can play that back in court and go, this is your words, so you have to now go, do you agree or disagree with this? And you're on oath, you can't lie. So he is hanging himself here. So if this was a real person,
but it's not. It doesn't even look like it's going to go to court.
No, and that's why I said, like, who's taking him to court? That's a big question, because if he has managed to get the US somehow kind of paid off to some degree, and at the moment that's what he's saying. He's saying the US arm of FTX is solvent. So if they're not going to prosecute him, who in the rest of the world goes after something like this?
And he'll just say, well, that was all through the international arm and therefore it's unsecured. So you should have read the small print.
And the governing body that is responsible for going after him is the Bahamas. And we know they are all paid off. Like he literally admitted that, and we saw it all happening. So they're not going after him because everyone in the Bahamas that was connected to FTX is now a multi-millionaire. So if America aren't going after him either, who is it?
Yeah,
because it seems to be everyone just waits for America to do something. Like, really, there's loads of customers in Britain, loads will be across Europe, loads in Asia, but seemingly no one else has the authority to go grab someone in the Bahamas. It's only America, which is, even that in itself is a bit weird.
Do we want to move on to the final SBF article. I'm hoping we can actually move more onto Bitcoin next week. But the final one is CoinDesk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the many crimes of SBF is what you titled it. So I think the first thing which I've made a note on is, so FTX were made in 2019, weren't they? How did they make such big donations to the Democrats within a year? That's a question which I keep on coming back to.
Yeah.
You're not stable as a company within a year.
Yeah. Well, it's huge, yeah. It's nuts. And they were throwing money around like they were VCs for nearly every single shitcoin and bollocks startup that was going as well, all within this 3 years.
Yeah, within 3 years, and they even said themselves legitimately that they were struggling to get bank accounts.
Yeah,
which I think was the start of all of this as well. So personally, I think that it didn't start off as a scam, and it just went into.
I think the donations at the start just highlight it as being a scam. I think if those donations weren't there, I could see your point, but it's just the fact within a year that I think it's for 2020, they gave 40 million at least.
Yeah, but as in when he first started, in terms of like when he was with Almeida, and then he was doing the arbitrage, and then all of a sudden, we do this every week, and I feel as though something changes in Bitcoin every week, and it just probably went a million miles per hour, and faster.
The more that I've learned about this, like the amount of money he was giving to his old company Alameda, the way he's distancing himself from it now, that he was at the very least being extremely reckless, and at worst, this was a scam from minute one, and he was a Trojan horse. This was always the intention. The intention was to throw this to crash the plane into the mountain. That was always the intention, making sure all the rich people got their luggage off first and then parachuted out the back and let the rest of the customers just blow up in the explosion. But yeah, the only reason I linked this article, because again, it's a repeat of everything we've said, but it's the truth one. So if you want to actually read a proper article, the headline of this one, FTX's collapse was a crime, not an accident. Sam Bankman-Fried is a con man and a fraudster of historic proportions. That's the headline we should be reading, not the altruist billionaire failed in his saving the planet mission. I mean, that was
which he's admitted was a pile of shit as well by text.
Yeah.
So have you guys seen his mum's article that she published nearly a decade ago, where it's something about children shouldn't be admissible for their actions, like literally like 2013. So I saw it, and effectively it's saying that if he's been brought up with this mindset from his mum, saying that, oh, well, if you've done something, you don't really have to admit it, or it's not your fault, then in his mind, he genuinely might believe that it's okay. Like when you maybe tell kids, if someone pushes you, push them back. And if the teacher tells you off, well, tell them it's okay because they started it. So in their mind, it's like, well, it's all right because he started it. And so to him, he's like, well, it's fine. They gave me their money. So I was able to spend the money.
I thought you were going to go down a different route, Ben, and say that he's actually identifying as a 12-year-old.
Yeah. But another thing I didn't realize is the personal loans the executives got, because it's detailed in this article. There's 4 billion of loans came out, and it's always interesting. It came from Alameda. So they didn't take it from FTX, but the executives of FTX got loans from Alameda, and Sam got $1 billion just direct to him. But then you also got an extra 2.3 billion to a company called Paperbird, but he owns 75% of that company. So you could just argue there's 3 billion of, and by the way, these loans are unsecured. So they didn't check whether we could pay this money back ever. They just gave it him.
But the question is, if he's getting 3 billion in loans, what on earth would he spend 3 billion in? He hasn't got time to start another company, which is the only expense which is that high, because he's running FTX. So therefore, the money's being siphoned out. There's no other reasonable conclusion from this.
He's got a lot of people to pay off, hasn't he?
I suppose there is that aspect. But one thing which I did pick out again was the US bank piece. It does make me wonder whether this part wasn't on purpose and it was meant to go on for longer and bigger.
Yeah, I think it was meant to go on for longer.
Yeah, because the bank was relatively recent and it was only cycling, 80 million per quarter or 70 million extra than it was. So, that would be 280 million a year. Whereas in reality, I think it would be cycling over $1 billion if it was in full use.
Oh, yeah, and the rest, yeah. I think you'd have wanted to build up to one of the biggest banks in the world, probably. Yeah. I think the only thing that is a surprise around FTX is that it did collapse within 3 years. I think they had the full intention of... And just imagine how much damage it could have done if they could have got to number one spot and really became, like the Facebook or the Twitter or the Amazon or the Google of exchanges. And then they flew the plane into the mountain. That could have had an impact the size of Mt. Gox, where, if they got to a point where 90% of people that are buying Bitcoin or crypto buy on FTX and then they smash it into the ground.
Yeah.
That could have really put us back a decade. Who knows? But
absolutely, especially if the price would have reflected it. So if it wasn't where it was at the time and it went to $100,000, more and more people would have naturally FOMO'd in, meaning more and more people would have been onto their platform as well. And equally, more and more people wouldn't have necessarily done the research and the education to get their coins off the platform, and more people would have therefore got wrecked.
Yeah, and they've had way more Bitcoin to sell as well.
Yeah.
But we would have had cheaper Bitcoin as a result.
We'd have got super cheap Bitcoin, yeah.
And we all know that Bitcoin is inevitable.
Yeah, it would have just delayed the inevitable. It just could have hurt us more. As it was, I think the way that it blew up, I don't think many Bitcoiners gave a shit about FTX, which is why I barely really noticed it, really. It's kind of another sideshow until I didn't even know they're number 2, I don't think, at the time. And then it blows up. They're number 2, are they? How'd that happen? And so I think Sam's biggest mess up is blowing it up too early. I think his intention was always to blow it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to move on from
that crap. Let's move on.
So we've got Ledger in the news, breaking news just before we came on.
Yeah. So this one's an interesting one. So think of Kindle, right? So a mini Kindle meets Ledger, because the e-ink that is used on a Kindle will now be the screen for the new Ledger due to drop in March 2023. So rather than using a small LCD screen, for those that watch us on YouTube, thank you very much, but ultimately it will be slightly larger, looks like the size of a credit card or a mobile phone, and it will display everything there. Looks pretty neat.
Looks expensive.
It does indeed. And V1 is always going to be the one that everyone will obviously buy, but it will need iterations. But yeah, expensive at what, $250 is it? $210 up?
And it's also you got to think, whilst you're storing a lot of wealth on it potentially, do you really need something which looks that fancy and precise?
But you can set the front cover to your favorite NFT.
Oh, so I can get a stick dicks.
Yeah, isn't that worth
what you've bought?
$279?
I wonder how much I can get a stick dicks picture for.
Probably less than $279.
I'm hoping I can get it for $1 because I might buy it.
You'll send the price of stick dicks up through the roof. But yeah, so my view on this is, okay, great. We kind of knew that we needed better UI and all that stuff. The price point is obviously extortionately too high.
Yeah.
More than double the price of a normal Ledger. And what do you really get for that? You get a bit of style. You get to put an NFT on the front cover. So for your typical Bitcoiner, nothing is what you get extra, really. I want a really dumb device that doesn't have too much going on. Every single time you add an extra bit of functionality to a hardware wallet, you introduce a potential vulnerability, potential security flaw, which could be exploited to steal your Bitcoin. So you don't want any bells and whistles on your hardware wallets. So my recommendation is to stay well clear of this. My recommendation, even if I liked it, would be stay well clear. Don't buy the first version. Don't be there in March pressing buy. Let someone other idiot buy it and get hacked. And if you really want one, come back in May, June, July next year. Come back in 3 or 4 months, and you'll know then. A couple of hardware updates would have been pushed to it. Because there will be some problems with it. There just will. Because the problem is they've made it look beautiful, right? But that means they've changed everything. They've re-engineered the whole thing, top to bottom. That's a risk. That's a big risk.
If you think the majority of people who use this kind of hardware are Bitcoiners, it's not something which a Bitcoiner would really be drawn to. Because they're looking at, well, like you said, is it overcomplicated? Is there risk surrounding that? And then also, why am I spending so much on this when I can buy this one over here for a fraction of the price? So I kind of feel that, yeah, it's not going to take off. But then again, people may want to put their F or NFTs or whatever else on it.
Yeah, well, I think the price will come down. It's just
definitely.
This will be the starting price, and I think that this will come down once they sell a load of them. And they probably will. They'll sell a load. It'll probably come back down to around the $150 price point, which will be you can have a normal Ledger Nano, or you can have this Ledger Stack, and it's up to you which one you pick. And because at the moment it's double, so it's a bit of a no-brainer that I would not pick this, but for double the price. Because the thing is, if I was going to do this, I'd want, I need 5 to 10 of these really to be able to, and I'm not going to be updating my Ledger Stack.
5 to 10 to store $1 trillion on.
Yeah, man, it's fine. 10 billion on each.
On the upside,
I would actually talk about. I would just go back, because to true Bitcoiners, when you look at Ledger, really all you need, and I always say this to everybody, you only need a Ledger Nano X, because you do have Ledger Nano S Plus, which is, let's just double check actually. Yeah, so Ledger Nano S Plus is the simple one. That's all you really need. The Ledger Nano X is the one where you can add Bluetooth to it, and then you could add more shitcoins to it. And then equally, Ledger Stacks is now that super one which you can add an NFT to, but it's obviously just promoting to more shitcoinery. So I guess it's moving more and more to the consumer side of the market and the dumb money, but it's appealing, isn't it, to those, and it's getting more and more mass adoption into it. Because really, to, again, the common or standard Bitcoiner, you don't need any of that, because you're only putting one coin on there.
But if you did get it, you get your StickDix picture, and going on OpenSea, StickDix 1740 is now about £40. It's getting closer to the dollar.
Probably cost you 100 quid in Ethereum gas fees to buy it.
That was the next question: is how much are gas fees actually?
And as you do it, you'll probably lose all your money in the wallet because it's not secure, and then you will cry.
But there is a chance I could have a StickDix picture.
I'd imagine I just right-click save it, and then probably just imagine like if you actually had to pay for your desktop background on your phone. That's what they're suggesting.
Exactly.
No, if I want a background on my fucking Ledger, which I don't, just let me right-click and save any picture. If it's fucking dumb.
So I may be making an assumption, but you don't seem to like StickDix.
I love StickDix. But I'm not paying. And I just did some quick maths on that on the Ledger Nano S, and it's $83 for one of those. So you can basically buy 3.5 of them for one of these. So it's not even double; it's 3.5 times. So it's a no-brainer. There's no, if it's 1-to-1, I would go, you know what, I would probably be persuaded to buy one just to try it out. The thing that I want, this is the thing, right? This is probably going to be hopefully like the evolution of this. And I would like to see a Bitcoin hardware wallet similar to this, and really nice and slick. Because this looks like something potentially you could give to a non-Bitcoiner, and they could just start and use it with the USB device with all the little buttons, and you got to click it, and it's like no one's ever done that before, right? That's a very unusual kind of way of using a device. I've never used a USB device like that other than in Bitcoin. Whereas straight away with this, it looks like a phone, kind of feels like a Kindle. You're just clicking buttons. It seems very user-friendly. So I like the design, but I don't like the price, and I don't like the fact there's so much shitcoin and NFT on it. So
yeah, I mean, up to 5,000 coins. Like, I only need one coin on there, dude. Like, don't need it. Don't need it.
I know we need that Apple guy to come into Bitcoin and just go, make us a fucking Bitcoin one, dude. Like super simple.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about all the utility of FTT?
Yeah.
I don't know what the utility is, but yeah, it's what SBF said.
You can see it. You can see where it's going, though. And I'd say kudos to actually moving the needle a little bit further with the whole touchscreen and the wireless charging.
We're waiting to see what Block are doing as well. So Block made their announcement by, what was it, the multi-signature hardware device. So there's different things coming along. We're seeing some nice advancements. They may not all be right, but we'll see general advancements which will hopefully help all the normies.
Yeah, I would hope they're not too far advanced just yet, and then they've seen this and gone, great. Like, it just takes some pointers from this, like, because you got the Apple. This guy obviously has got, I don't know how long he worked at Apple for, but he's taken a load of their learnings and he's applied it into the hardware wallet. So now Block can go, right, just buy a few of these, get them in, re-engineer it, and just cut out all the shit, make it Bitcoin only. And I'm moving full time over to Block, using a nice hardware device. And hopefully that will be the one then that I can go, I don't need to look after this for you now. Mum, dad, fucking uncle, auntie, brother, sister. Here's your fucking things. They're on you. They're nice and easy. Just put them in a drawer. Who knows? That's the dream, right? That's what we want. It's what we want. Everyone should have their ledger stored away, hidden. They know how to use it. They know how important it is. That's their life savings. That's what we need to get to. And maybe the ledgers we have right now aren't going to be it. So maybe this is the start of something. Hopefully it is. Yeah,
I think so. And as it says at the bottom of the article, in November, Thanksgiving, they had their best 2 days sales ever. So I always do wish that if Ledger was a publicly listed company, because I would definitely invest into Ledger.
No, why would you do that? You're much better off buying Bitcoin. You don't want to diversify into shitcoins. The problem is, like, Ledger will go bust eventually, right? Because their main customer base is shitcoiners. So once Block brings out a Bitcoin hardware wallet that can rival theirs, they're done. Because eventually the shitcoiners die out. So the bulk of their marketing and engineering effort is on shitcoins right now. So when
still the early days, you're right.
When they blow up, which they will, their customer base is going to go, I only want Bitcoin. Why have I got a ledger when I only want Bitcoin? And they're going to go, that's the ledger. So eventually they're going to die. And Bitcoin will come out of the ashes of that. So the best performing asset of the next 500 years are going to be Bitcoin. So don't be buying shitcoin stocks in shitcoin companies.
There we have it. What's next?
Inflation Weekly, double dose.
Oof.
Oof. Double hard on right there.
But first question about this. So this is Yellen on inflation. She blames China and thinks that Biden's great. How is she working in a government when she's 76 years old?
I know.
And she's talking about staying longer. Like, I've got a very negative opinion about the government. Let's put it that way. But if we're going to have governments, why have we got people who are years, months, days away from dying, planning for the future, rather than someone who's, say, 40, who's got another 25 years of normal working. But instead, we're giving it to a 76-year-old little lady with a Bronx accent.
Who's a known criminal. But it's almost as if we're giving it to people that have committed large amounts of fraud in their life, are bought and paid for, and they're doing what they're...
Did she actually have known fraud like Christine Lagarde?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But it's like why politics and the banks are all full of these old people, right? You'd like to think it's like, oh no, it's because it's wisdom, and the people that should be leading our generation, the people that have lived it, and they know the mistakes and da. But in reality, we know what they're doing. They're the gatekeepers. They're the puppets, and they are trying to protect the world from the young. The old people that largely own the majority of the wealth, and these are paid puppets that...
And she's the person for the last 10, 15 years who's been promoting what is it, near zero interest rates and inflation, isn't it? So
exactly.
I mean, if you want to look at
from one ship to another,
if you want to look at it from an ESG point of view, she's one of the people who's caused mass consumerism and disposable goods.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's how on it we are. We're with ESG.
Which has come here to die and at the same time to kill others through inflation, or, well, there is no inflation ultimately, and people just need to spend a little less, right?
Well, she told us recession wasn't going to happen, and we're in recession, even though she can't admit it. And she also got quizzed, is zero COVID good? It was good at first. The numbers were low, and it's just like, it's never good. Literally, we're seeing a backlash in the UK right now. I think there's record deaths from strep A for children. The deaths within, 6 weeks, are lower than all the deaths from COVID within the last 3 years for strep A in the UK. That's how ridiculous it's got.
Yeah, it's weird actually. There was I don't know if you saw it, but there was an autopsy done last night, live, the first ever one in the UK.
I was going to watch it. 10 o'clock on Channel 4. Was it good?
Yeah, it's okay. But the interesting point was it's on Channel 4. They introed it with this girl got cancer of the eye. It's actually the tear duct, and very aggressive, spread all over. And they basically went, it's inoperable, and you're going to die very quickly unless the only way to treat this would be some clinical trial that isn't proven, is experimental. But this happened in 2020, and the pandemic had just kicked off, and they went, we've locked down and we're not doing any clinical trials on anything that isn't COVID related until the pandemic finishes. So she had to wait for a clinical trial until the pandemic finished. She died before the pandemic finished. So she's an example right there that they shoved on Channel 4. She's a young woman. She's 30 years old. She had two kids. Yeah. Well, she was 28 technically, 28 when she got diagnosed, died at 30. Because she got diagnosed with a cancer that needed specialist treatment, and all the specialists were working on COVID, so she died. So I couldn't believe they aired that bit on Channel 4, because it was like they just admitted it. Here's yet another example of a perfectly innocent young girl who could have potentially been saved, and they left her to die with no treatment.
I thought you were going to say through the autopsy they found that they could have she had had it.
Oh no, but she probably would have died anyway. To be fair, they found literally something like 500 different tumors throughout her body, but that's because it spread for 2 years. She needed some very experimental treatment early on to stop it, but because they left it 2 years, obviously it was spread all over her body. Because that's what happens to cancer, right? You have to get it quick. That's why loads of people are dying of cancer now, because they didn't get 2 years of treatment when they needed it. And so it's
going back to the point. So in this one, there's numerous little sound clips in there. So Jay Powell's trying to slow things down, and it's just like, but wasn't the meddling what caused the massive cost of inflation, the cost of living? And it's like, oh yeah, we're going to meddle some more because we've got tools to sort it. It's like, well, if you got tools, why the fuck's it happened in the first place?
which says that Biden's inflation reduction plan or bill, whatever it is, that's going to save the day. And everybody knows, right? Even I've listened to some podcasts where the majority Democratic politician favoring leaning people, they've admitted that even if you look at this inflation reduction plan, the first 5 years of it is spending money, and then the next 5 you magically save loads, and you just go right. So what tends to happen? How long is Biden potentially going to get elected for if he gets voted for again? 4 years. Oh, so guess what? He gets all the spending, and then he's run for 2 terms. He has to step down. It's probably going to be a Republican or something that has to step up, and they go, by the way, mate, you got 5 years of no spending and actually reduction. You've got to undo all the damage because we said so. And no one's going to do that. So what's going to happen is someone's going to run on a policy which is, I won't cut spending. I'm going to spend even more, and that's what will happen. So you get the first 5 and not the next 5.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be. It's kind of like, ultimately, I told you so, isn't it? Before you do it. So if we lose the vote, then obviously Republicans get in. Well, it wouldn't have happened if we had still got in.
Oh yeah, we would have done it. We would have saved the
We
one.
would have done it. Yeah, we would have saved it.
Any real plan should be like, we are in the shitter now. So from the day this gets passed, we will start seriously cutting spending and actually reducing the amount of dollars in the world by a significant amount to bring us back to a sensible amount of supply. We need to probably cut 50 to 70% of the amount of dollars in the world, because we've tripled the supply of it over the last decade. So we need to get back down to those levels. That would be a sensible plan. And we start today. And by doing that, we're cutting government by 50%. We're cutting education and putting a load of it into private, with a load of serious big cuts. And that would be fair play. Yellen and Biden and Powell are all taking this super seriously, and they're trying to fix it. Instead, her plan is to spend even more for the next 5 years.
I think one of the things that America really should look at, and I'm sure people have said this many a time before, is just the whole running for the 2 terms and 8 years in total. Because when you look at, even though they're not great examples, the UK, Russia, China, where you have that longevity of the same party, they are able to make certain decisions that aren't based on winning votes for midterms and obviously for elections, and that way they can look longer term, and ultimately, they look at. I remember Putin saying this. They look at the US and just laugh, because they know that it's going to change regardless of whatever the policy is. So I'll do it for this guy, but in a couple of years' time, you'll be gone, and someone new will be in.
So going into this one, 2 things which he talked about was using the strategic oil reserves. So it's to the lowest level which the oil reserves have ever been, I think, or for many a decade. And this is a way they buy oil from abroad or whatever, then they filter the oil reserves. So pretty much they're keeping the oil at an artificially low level, aren't they? So when they run out of oil reserves, they're fucked. They are generally fucked. And then the same with the price. They're putting price controls on drug prices as well. And this is, once again, they're both acts of how to, it's not so much how to control inflation, but how to hide inflation. But once those controls, or once the reserve ends, that's when you get a massive explosion. So it's what we've seen in the UK around energy prices. We had price controls which no one seems to acknowledge. And when those price controls came to an end, you end up with companies popping. And when they need to be renewed, they're like, it needs to be like, it was literally like, was it 200% up? It was that drastic. And we're going to see it. It is that big boom. And it's like, well, your inflation's there, apart from if you don't count oil and other essential living elements, which is what we've done in the UK.
Yeah, because I think their big one is insulin, so they're going to put a cap on the price of insulin. But all they're doing is whack-a-mole, right? You whack the price of insulin down, or you cap it. All the pharmaceutical companies do is 4 more moles jump out the side, which is, well, we're making that money back somewhere else, so other drugs will go up.
Yeah, cancer treatment.
Which ones didn't you stop us putting the price up of? Oh, we're going to lose 10 billion a year on insulin. Guess what? We're going to make 15 billion a year extra off cancer, leukemia, whatever. Like, they're just going to make it back somewhere else. It's just political pandering where they can just go, the price of insulin, it's going to save X million people, X amount of dollars. And you go, yeah, but another X million amount of people are going to be paying X amount of dollars more for a different drug. You've just moved the problem.
Yeah. And it's such a heavily regulated industry to keep players out, but you end up with these artificially high prices in the US especially. Whereas if you actually had the open market, then you'd actually have a fairer price.
You're putting a plaster on a slit throat. It's just ridiculous. You have to solve the core problem, and the core problem is money is becoming worth less and less and less. How do you stop that? Stop increasing the supply of the money, making it worthless. That's like pharmaceutical companies to a certain extent, although they are pretty much governments. The main problem is not them; it's the fact that money's being worth less and less and less, so people can't afford stuff they could afford before.
It's twofold. It's money's worth less and less, and it's also regulations put in place by cronyism in order to restrict people entering the market, which would cause a competition. But I thought you were going to say what was going to solve this was FTT.
Jesus. It's your new dink doink. They say dink doink again.
Especially on your new ledger with stick dicks.
Anyway, let's move on.
I'll be able to get 1 million FTT tokens soon. And a stick
you guys definitely know what you're getting for Secret Santa next year.
You get your 69 FTT tokens.
That won't be enough to cover the amount you got to spend on a Secret Santa of £5.
I'll get your stick dicks too.
Still have change. What else am I getting? So the next one is another inflation story. So we've got a bit of a double whammy, and it's I'm trying to remember who actually said it. So it was on the BBC, and it was leading with "Strikes are unfair" by Nadim Zawahiri. Strikes are unfair, and it will disrupt people's lives. And the other quote was, "Vladimir Putin wants to see strikes." So you had all these.
That was the one that killed me. It was like, basically, we're just offsetting it to it's Vladimir Putin's fault.
Yeah, the previous story we're blaming China, but don't worry, Biden's got it. In this story, it's Putin wants you to strike. Don't worry, be nice. It's like, why is it always China and Russia's fault when in reality the reason why people are striking the UK inflation, this fucker is representing the government, and you got Yellen obviously representing the government, blaming China. It's like, no, it's the US government's fault why inflation is so high.
Exactly.
It's the bad guy over there. It's not me.
We had a conversation with someone, and they said, they've got no reason to strike me earn X amount, which is more than me, and all this. And I just said, well, they got a reason to, because they've had the money devalued. Like, the government have done this, and the government are trying to stop people by doing it by using emotional blackmail. It's completely out of order. Literally, the official figures, 10 point something percent at the moment as inflation. And that isn't just 10% being taken away from your money. It's now an average, and it's been going on for 18 months or so, and it's been 7% and up. So you're looking at compound on top of 10%. So we've had for 6 months around about 7 to 8, another 12 at 10. So you're ending up with a lot of inflation going on above the average, which shouldn't even happen. And these people's wages is ending up being nothing, because what's a nurse paid like 23, 24 plus overtime, so they can work themselves to the bone and get up to 30 or something. But rent's up, electricity's up, gas is up, water rates are probably up, councils are putting the prices up, so your council tax is up, your chicken, cheese, if you eat tofu, it's all up. But the government doesn't want you to have a pay rise because they want cheaper debt and cheaper expenses.
Yeah. Because the thing is, it's I don't agree with striking. That's my by and large is if you don't like your job and what you get paid to move. That's pretty much my general stance on that.
But you're stuck as a nurse.
Yeah, you're not necessarily. You can go private, but the issue is, and why striking probably is, I probably would support it to a certain degree, is the government employs so many people that they can't all leave. And I think the recent stats were 20 to 30% of the UK are employed by some form of government agency somewhere.
It's far too big, though.
It's insanely big. There's literally not enough money.
It's the number one employer, I think, in the UK, right?
Oh yeah, by a country mile. Just the NHS is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The NHS, yeah.
But that's just one arm of government. You haven't included all the admin staff, the police forces, all the councils.
But you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't demand a pay rise because Putin will enjoy this.
Oh, I know. Yeah, using that excuse is so funny. It's hilarious. But it's one of that. When the problem is the sad thing is, right? Because I saw what the nurses are asking for. They're asking for 10%, which everyone sees that and goes, "Oh my God, they're so greedy," because most people don't understand inflation and go, they're actually asking to get paid the same as last year. That's what they're asking. And the government went, there's nowhere near enough money to pay you that. And it's just a case of, well, you're bankrupt then. You're FTX.
But you do kind of like, it's like FTX. You wonder where the hell is all the money going? Like if you literally had this on a ledger.
You've seen the private jets.
You had all the income coming up to the government and it going out. It's like, okay, we got track and trace.
Most of it goes to the Ministry of Defence, and the rest of it went to the COVID relief stuff. So
but track and trace,
main partners that all the money went to.
But you kind of go, what's the end result of all these? And if it was a private company, the private company would be bankrupt pretty quickly. Whereas because it's a government, it's literally a parasite. It's like, it's all right, it's a government. Oh, it's funny. That's literally the response which I get off my dad. And it's a government. It's just like, it's not acceptable.
Yeah, I know.
It's not funny until it starts hitting you in the pocket, and then you come back and you think, well, where is this?
Yeah, but happening? It's literally bred into him. It's hit him in the pocket. My dad's in his 70s, so he's been taxed a lot of money over the years, but he accepts it as part of the life. And it's just like this.
Because all of the fight has been beaten out of him over the years. That's the reason why. Because he's just like, Well,
the thing is, if you've done all right during your life, then you can keep ahead of it. Because his wages probably beat inflation. So he's probably largely going, it's just a necessary evil that exists in the world. The problem is, during the boomers' life, what counterbalanced inflation was house prices. So they benefited from house prices booming. So they kind of became quite rich during all this. Whereas for us, for the millennials coming through, house prices have not increased faster than inflation. Our wages have stagnated well behind inflation. So, it's the people coming in now and the people that are at the bottom, which is the nurses and the minimum wage workers, they are now seriously underwater. And we're getting to the point where there's no asset ballooning other than Bitcoin, but there's no asset that the general person has to compensate for it. Whereas for the boomers, if they got on the housing market, it was kind of okay. Their wages were being eroded, everything was becoming more expensive, but their house went from 50 grand to 500 grand. So it kind of compensated it. It was kind of okay.
Think about the our entry time to the job market, like how much we were earning. It was like not a lot, but got by as a single person, managed to have some nights out. But you kind of go, in 15, 20 years since that happened, the value of the pound is halved.
Yeah,
and so
wages
now
have gone up by 30% maybe.
Yeah, so now that kind of money. So going into what the nurses earn, they're trying to raise a family on that kind of wage, and you kind of think even if we hadn't gone out, we wouldn't be able to raise a family on what we earned.
Yeah, again, we were talking before we pressed record, and the son's nativity, and I'm seeing all these teachers there, and I'm thinking, you've done a full day, and then you've done this whole production, and you're here at night. You guys don't get paid enough for this, and you're all happy. Like, you're all happily doing this, although you're not happy because you're obviously striking. But, in this moment, you are there, you are teaching and, enthusiastic, but you should be being paid a lot more than you are. So I get the fact that you're striking. Equally, I get the fact that you have a lot of holidays. And equally, I know that you knew the job when you took the job on as well. So, it's a hard one.
Yeah. The sad thing is that as we go through this, like all these people, all the nurses, all the teachers, and they are the foundation of a lot of societies. Because, like you said, I've interacted with some teachers, some nursery kind of teachers now, and they're great. They really are.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah.
And they really go in and they're really passionate about their job, and it's fantastic. But I just know when they go home at night and when they start planning like what they want to do in their life, where am I going to live, where's my family going to be? Because a lot of them I found that are enthusiastic are young, and they haven't realized yet that their hopes and dreams are not going to be realized.
Literally, they need to become headmaster, headmistress in order to have any kind of life now. It's actually ridiculous.
It's
but they've got
because there's only so many headmaster jobs, right? And most people need to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So they've got to hit that pinnacle, and it's going to get to a point where that's to go on holiday.
Yeah,
it's sad, and all these jobs are going to go as well, because all these government funded jobs. This is going to be the collapse. This is going to be the FTX collapse, but it's going to be government standard, where people don't lose their life savings, but people will lose their jobs. They'll lose their pensions. It's going to be.
But Putin will love it if you object.
Yeah, and they will blame everything. They will blame China. They'll blame Russia. They'll blame the pandemic. They'll blame Bitcoin, and
this is why we kind of need the Bitcoin standard. So you can go, this is how much money is coming in and out of taxes. People go, oh, you want us to pay 70%? Fuck off. That Bitcoin isn't coming into the economy, so it's reasonable tax amounts. I mean, it's cycling around. You go, how much Bitcoin have we got coming in taxes, which is acceptable? And therefore we can divvy it out. And you're looking at less loss as well, because it's the accountability. So it's kind of like bringing that point round away from fiat, which we know it is the FTX situation, the giant Ponzi, away to some sound money, where you're kind of going, well, this is what I've got. This is what I can do. What can I pay the civil servants? You're not allowed a final salary, pension, and a six-figure salary for working on a council. You can have one or the other. And we're also not going to do a £32 billion track and trace or a lockdown, and we're not going to do the spending on silly-ass wars, which no one wants.
Well, lockdown would be impossible on a Bitcoin standard, really. The only way to do it, well, at least a government-funded lockdown would be impossible, because they wouldn't be able to physically afford to pay everyone to stay at home.
They used to have to ask people to give money for wars.
Yeah. And then they realized what inflation was. They went, oh, we don't need to ask them. We can just steal it from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Make their money worth less without even realizing it. They think they've got the same amount in their bank account, but lol, it's worth 20% less. And then, so here's another here's.
Gosh, we love Inflation Weekly, don't we? This is the core of the 4Bs.
Yeah, well, this is the final boss, right? So it's actually interesting discussing FTX. Then you go kind of back to Inflation Weekly and go, it's the same fucking story, just on a bigger scale. It's the same. So it's like literally the same arguments.
They're conning everyone.
You could take our arguments for that section and just replace it with FTX, and then go back to FTX and replace that with the European Central Bank, and it's the same thing, really.
Yep.
Because these fuckers come on TV and do stupid interviews as well and admit to crimes and go, oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Is Christine Lagarde. What was it? Inflation won't be that bad. We will see. How do you know? We will see. We will see. And it's just like, my God.
That is such a scintillating, intelligent answer. Wow, that is why you get paid like $3 million a year and $4 million to do a speech for half an hour.
I mean, this
insight.
If you think, I was going to say, this article from European Central Bank, which we've got, so the FUD article of the week. So you think European Central Bank, they've got billions being pumped into it. They've got the top researchers, they've got the top economists working there, they've got financial analysts. And then you read this article, and I was kind of going, I should be annoyed by this, but there's nothing in it.
Correct. Yeah.
There's literally, it's all surface level. It's like, well, what makes you think that? Nothing.
It's like it's really been written in the Daily Mail with no citations at all.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
It was more like a blog, wasn't it? Of
an opinion piece. You would expect this all to be evidenced and researched. It's just, we think this, we think that.
We had this person in work who was replying to a webinar about Bitcoin, and it's all this surface FUD, and it's exactly the same. Bitcoin is rarely used for legal transactions. How do you know? What is the ratio of legal versus illegal transactions compared to fiat?
When reading the article, and obviously to all listeners, you can see all of the web links in the show notes. At the beginning, when it said something along the lines of Bitcoin will never be used to buy anything, or something around it won't be used as legal tender, I was just thinking, oh my gosh. And then obviously the transactions are slow and clunky.
Well, this is the next one. So picking up on the slow, real Bitcoin transactions are cumbersome, slow, and expensive. Bitcoin has never been used to any significant extent for legal, real-world transactions. So
and that was early on in the article, wasn't it? I was just like, oh gosh.
And this is dated November 2022. So for any listeners or viewers who are looking at this and kind of going, well, what's your retort to that? Lightning. So if you think about Bitcoin, you've got Bitcoin, which is fundamentally your gold. So it's heavy, it's cumbersome, it moves around, it has to be on chain, so it's got higher security, higher verification. And above here, we've got what we call Lightning, and Lightning's a Visa level. So you don't have to move your gold around by cart. You're moving the IOUs between the banks saying that, Mr. Orlin has transferred £50 to Sir Neverlook, and therefore the banks then go, when we move all the gold to the other bank, when we're leveling up between us, so that bank owes us this, we owe them that, we'll put that £50 in the list. And it's the same with Bitcoin. You use Lightning for these smaller ones, but say if you're going to buy a house, you'd probably use something on chain because it would be a bigger amount, whereas Lightning for your Frappuccino, latte, Miss No Show, you would use Lightning. And so this one, you're kind of going, have you bothered researching Bitcoin? Because this is a fundamental. So, we've come in fairly late, but I want to say it's about 2016, 2017, Lightning was brought in.
Correct. Yeah.
And obviously it's legal tender in El Salvador, and there's Bitcoiners all over the planet that use it. And for them, like, really, they need to prove their point. So they've said used for legal transactions, which is actually quite a clever title, because straight away you infer, it is used for illegal transactions. But actually what they mean is that, it's not used significantly for legal real-world transactions. And this is like an SPF answer, which means, well, any significant extent, well, okay, if you compare that to fiat, then technically you're correct. Because, of course, the 99.9% of transactions are done in fiat, not done in Bitcoin. But that's because we're still in the early adopter stage where you're incentivized to stack and not spend. So clever, even because I read this going, okay, then what percent of Bitcoin transactions are illegal? Go on, give me the stat. Not in here. Of course it isn't. But from the title, that's what I inferred. And I'm pretty sure that's what they intend you to infer as well. Really, this mean, it's not as big as fiat yet, so it's obviously a scam. Nah. And then
I was just going to say another one of the FUD is, but Bitcoin is also not suitable as an investment. It does not generate cash flow like real estate. Fair point, but that you need that in the fiat world. This is when we say there's a sound money. You don't need to generate that, or dividends like equities. Cannot be used productively like commodities. So it's saying gold, but I think quite a lot of the uses for commodities aren't actually productive, or provide social benefits like gold. So my question here is, what the fuck is a social benefit?
Yeah, and
what does gold do? Does gold go and check on its neighbor when it's got a temperature?
I think in reality, what they're trying to say here is that they've kind of stepped on a landmine, because I think the social benefit is
I was going to say,
you can keep your store of value at home and you can take custody of it. That's what gold is. So I think it adds a bit of
I was going to go even further than that. The social
Ah.
benefit of it is ultimately it helps the 1.3 billion people that are unbanked. It's a pretty huge social benefit there.
And it also helps all those millions or billions of people who are suffering from hyperinflation because of their government's reckless spending and poor monetary policies.
Yeah. And so Bitcoin has never gone, does it generate cash flow? Well, no, we're money. So does it have a dividend? No.
You don't need it.
Can it be used productively? Well, you could if you want to lose custody of it, you can go and gamble it in something like BlockFi and probably lose it. So you could productively use Bitcoin if you want to accept the risk. But does it provide social benefits? Boom, there you go. That's the biggie. That's the biggie. We separate money from state. That's what we're doing. So let's cross out gold or maybe leave gold in there. I'm fine with gold there, like gold and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Bang, you're at bin sell. You just
it's
stupid.
So moving on to another one about bubbles. So we love the bubble one because it's a tulip. Speculative bubbles rely on new money flowing in. Bitcoin has also repeatedly benefited from waves of new investors. The manipulations by individual exchanges or stablecoin providers, etc., during the first waves were well documented, but less so with stabilizing factors after the supposed bursting of a bubble in spring. I thought bubbles just burst.
Yeah, bubbles don't.
They do.
We inflating. and I love how they go, oh, and the manipulation of exchanges during the first waves are well documented. Want to link us to some? I don't remember that. How did the exchanges make the price of Bitcoin go from 10 cents to $69,000? Where did all that money? How did they manipulate the price to there? Come on. I'd love to know because I'll fucking
how come it's still not at $69,000 if they've manipulated it so much?
Exactly. So why didn't we go to $1 million? Like what? Why did we stop there?
So big Bitcoin investors have the strongest incentives to keep the euphoria going at the end of 2020. So it's like, well, how has it lasted so many years then? If it's waves and bubbles.
Exactly. Yeah. You have a big boom and bust. Scams, they go up in a nice kind of like hockey stick, and then they come down in a straight line, and then they never are seen again. That is a bubble.
So FTT, which we've obviously spoken about a lot today. If you look at it, it's just whoomph down to $1 something, and the $1 is only steady because SBF has so much tokens.
Everyone that was going to sell was sold. There's no
one. So going on to another point, it's also worth noting that the Bitcoin system is an unprecedented polluter.
Gotta get that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering when we're going to get onto the war of the tumble dryers. So it was what the carbon footprint from US tumble dryers, so not worldwide, is larger than the Bitcoin footprint. And then we also throw in the fact that over 60% of Bitcoin uses renewable energy. What was it by 2025? Bitcoin is on track to become carbon negative. So how does it become carbon negative? It uses things like gas flares from oil fields. So therefore, it take away pollution and actually actively use that wasted energy in mining.
Yeah, well, because Bitcoin's a scarce asset, it naturally finds the cheapest energy, and the cheapest energy is largely waste is the best. And even the energy that is just normal energy, it probably wouldn't have got used. Plenty of energy gets just released into the ground.
So hydro is the example. They can't transfer it efficiently out, whereas it's most prominent near the source.
Yeah, and you can move a Bitcoin mining company anywhere. So already, I would argue that the net impact on Bitcoin on the environment, on the energy it's used, is so close to zero. It's not even worth saying, because literally you could switch off Bitcoin today, and then go, there you go. Have we solved the climate crisis now? No, you wouldn't have even noticed. Obviously, I don't think there is a climate crisis anyway. But even using the stats that they manipulate, Bitcoin wouldn't even be a blip on their little charts.
There's a graph which shows carbon footprint, and it's one which some mainstream media have mistakenly used because it shows the actual effect of Bitcoin and how minimal it is.
Yeah, and that's
And the
using their
fact
inflated stats of like every little bit of energy they're saying is dirty. They're
and the
assuming
fact and the
it's dirty.
fact is that Bitcoin could scale to cover worldwide, and that wouldn't mean that it increased because you wouldn't need more miners to secure the network.
And I think towards the end, or no, midway through, actually, you get to the real reason ultimately as to why they don't want this, and obviously why there's so much FUD around it. Because as it says, the supposed sanction of regulation has also tempted the conventional financial industry to make it easier for customers to access Bitcoin. This concerns asset managers and payment service providers, as well as insurers and banks, because the entry of financial institutions suggests to small investors that to small investors that investments in Bitcoin are sound. Well, that is where the penny does drop, because it is sound and it can't be inflated or deflated like it is in
and custody can't be stolen.
Exactly.
Though it does go against the principles of Pelosi, Yellen, Biden, Powell, everyone who are the gatekeepers. So my final point about this is kind of like follow on from what you said. Promoting Bitcoin bears a reputational risk for banks.
Yes, that's the key thing, isn't it? And surprise, surprise, it's on the ECB, so they definitely don't want it there.
Yeah, I hate to say it because they're being very negative here. They're literally saying, even though you might make a little bit of profit early on, the negative impact on customer relations, reputational damage to the entire industry could be enormous once Bitcoin investors have made further losses. So if you just follow this through and go, right, this is the Director General that wrote this, the Director General of the ECB. It's not some smuck.
Oh God, I didn't actually realize.
Yeah, Ulrich Binsel is not some smuck. He's not some random, intern. It reads like an intern's document.
It does read like an intern's doc. Yeah,
this guy is senior, right? So people look to the ECB for guidance, and undoubtedly, probably similar to the IMF, they have certain sway on what certain banks can and can't do. And what do you want to bet that if a bank in Europe wants to be a bit more Bitcoin friendly and release some Bitcoin products, maybe Ulrich at the ECB might go, oh, that regulation you wanted passing for that new product you had, or that funding you needed for this, yeah, you're not quite abiding by the way that the ECB would like to have banking run in Europe. Maybe if you close that Bitcoin thing down, you get the stamp of that regulation and that funding can come through. But until then, so that's probably what's going to happen. So I would imagine
this is a problem with government dependence. Like we talked about it with the UK, 30% or whatever the population, then also the funds, because even though our taxes are paying for everything, the government are divvying it out. Therefore, you're reliant upon the government. And it's like that circular. You're stuck in this never-ending circle of dependence. And it's the same with what you're saying. This bank's in a bit of trouble, or they need access to this market. Nope.
Yeah, and I don't blame them for this, by the way. That all they are doing here is defending their land. They are defending their fiat system, and this is really, when I read that, and the fact that they are just being so dishonest, and it's just a complete FUD article with zero references, zero research has been done. They are coming and they want to attack Bitcoin as aggressively as possible without really making it obvious that's what they're doing, because it looks like they haven't made a lot of effort. But what I would take on the course of this is I think the European banks are going to start becoming aggressive towards Bitcoin. They might start blocking transfers to exchanges. They might start closing bank accounts of Bitcoiners. Who knows? I think things could start to heat up, because I think they're starting to feel the pressure, because that kind of article that's a shot over the bow of Bitcoin, that one. That's just so you know, we've got bigger weapons to come, but we're letting you know, get your money out of Bitcoin, because we're going to start prosecuting and making it very difficult to be a Bitcoiner in Europe. It's not a good sign, this.
So
equally, I think it also preps them nicely for the ECB's sorry, the CBDCs that are coming, because I've just found Jürgen Schaff, the co-author, and he recently posted a well done to a guy called Christian Schaefer, who is appointed as the ECB's rulebook manager as part of the digital euro scheme. So, surprise, surprise, that's what they're going to be pushing. And there was an article about that just yesterday.
Need to send him a message on LinkedIn or whatever and just say,
Oh, will be.
You should be embarrassed.
Yeah. Well, I'd love the ability to actually, yeah, exactly. I'd love the ability to retort a lot of the things that they've mentioned in this article. So if he has some balls to accept and connect, let's do it.
He is on Twitter. Oh, I doubt he's got comments on his tweets, though.
Yeah.
Private brain. The views expressed here are entirely my own private ones, not necessarily those of the ECB. Oh, I need that article so I can just comment on it, you fucking moron. Or just the usual meme.
I've realised we missed the story. It's one of the big ones as well. We need to go back because the largest downward difficulty adjustment since July 2021.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I clicked this because I couldn't on the old work laptop, it was blocked. But yeah, it's definitely worthwhile talking about this one because the largest difficulty since, what was it, July 21? And then since China moved. So yeah, I read through this. It's quite interesting. Is it worthwhile just giving a little bit of background to the hash rate and the difficulty in terms of mining a block, which obviously comes out every 10 minutes?
Yeah. So the reason why it can come out every 10 minutes, on average anyway, is whether, depending on how many miners are on the network, this is part of the genius that Satoshi coded in, the number that needs to be guessed, depending on how many machines and how much hash rate is in the network, that the network itself will make that number harder to guess to make it still take 10 minutes to produce an answer. So as more and more hash rate comes onto the network, the difficulty adjustment goes up. But when lots of hash power leaves the network, the network will then make the algorithm and the number to be guessed easier to guess to then make it still be 10 minutes. So what's happened here when the difficulty adjustment goes down, and it's gone down by 28%, what that suggests is that 28% of miners that are providing the hash power to the network have left, which means the average block time looking at this would have been nearer 13 minutes instead of 10, because the load of hash power has left, and now there's not enough machines to solve a block in 10 minutes. So the network has adjusted and gone, there's 30% less power here. We need to adjust the difficulty down by 28% to make it back to 10 minutes on average that a number is guessed and a block is produced. And we carry on with Bitcoin. And unsurprisingly, really, the article kind of goes into, well, why has this happened? Because this is big, right? So probably the number one number, if you want to find out about the success or kind of frailty of Bitcoin, look at hash rate. Hash rate is the number that is much better than price, because this is how many miners are mining Bitcoin. And these people got huge skin in the game. Each miner costs upwards of 5 to 15 grand. And there's millions of these things all running. So these people have huge setups, huge warehouses full of miners. These guys are the ones that have either confidence or a lack of confidence in the market. So whereas price can go up and down, you could have one billionaire sell $1 billion worth of Bitcoin in 10 minutes and the price would just dump by 20%. Does that mean the market now doesn't like Bitcoin? No, it means one guy didn't, and he was wrong. Whereas hash power does not come on and off. You can't. These are very expensive machines. They have a limited lifespan, and switching them off and switching them on again is risky. You can break them. You leave these things running permanently to mine Bitcoin, because you need to mine Bitcoin constantly to pay back the initial investment in buying the machine itself. So when 28% of these machines get switched off, you need to listen and go, what the fuck happened to mean that 30% of miners switched themselves off? And in reality, it's nothing really surprising. It's the bear market, right? It's the bear market's happened. The price of Bitcoin has gone down by 65%. The price of energy has doubled, which is the main cost of mining companies is energy. So what this has done is a lot of people have been got a lot of VC funds. They've probably got a lot of Bitcoin profits, and they've been plowing that in over the last 18 months to try and keep their mining operators going. But in the last month or so, it's become too much. And there's a number of miners, the least efficient ones, are going under. They're becoming bankrupt. They can't afford their bills, and they're having to close down their miners, which the plus side of that is the miners that are still going, that are still solvent, now have a 30% less people to compete with, and they'll be making more Bitcoin. So it's nothing to really worry about, I don't think, because there's the main thing to worry about really is, why do you care about hash power? Well, this ultimately secures the network. It makes sure people can't hack the blockchain, insert funds, double spend money, increase the supply. So you need security. We still have way more security than Bitcoin needs. You would need multiple trillions to be able to overtake the amount of hash power you needed to influence the price of Bitcoin. And if you've doing that, then well, you've spent way more than we can make. You can do 1 or 2 double spends. Congratulations, you spent 2 trillion to do that. I hope those spends were pretty big. So fundamentally, like, as a Bitcoiner, should you care that 30% of the hash power is gone? Yeah, you should. But does it impact Bitcoin meaningfully? No. The 65% that is still left is more than enough to look after the network. It's nothing really to worry about.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I was watching the interview that Peter McCormack did with a guy called Nick Hansen, who was talking just 11 days ago about Bitcoin mining in distress because of exactly this. Not only the hash rate, but because miners are effectively losing money at this moment in time. And whilst times were good, they were putting money aside, and that's good. But, the cash reserves are being eaten up because of the fact that the energy prices have doubled, and equally the hash rate in difficulty has increased as well. So it could equally mean that some of those miners are or have been selling their Bitcoin to keep the companies afloat as well. Or they're just obviously coming off the network altogether because they've got to the point where they're like, I'm out, but I don't want to sell my Bitcoin, I'm out, and I'll just pack my bags right now, because, they're the hodlers, right?
Yeah, I must admit, I think in every cycle we tend to get this. The miners are the last people to capitulate because they do have so much skin in the game. If you're going to invest millions in miners and warehouses, you believe in Bitcoin. Like and you do not want to switch these things off. Like, you will run them at a loss because you still need to keep going, and you don't want to switch them off and then miss a big price increase or whatever. You've got to keep going. So when these guys switch off, this tends to mark a bottom, because these guys do not want to do this. They've just run out of money. They can't pay the bill. There's people at the gates going, we're claiming this back because you've got energy bills worth 5 mil, and this is enough. Like, no more debt. We're taking everything you've got in the warehouse, going to sell it off for scrap, and we're stopping you. So this could be, who knows, might be being a bit too bullish, but maybe this is the bottom. Maybe this is, you need a little bit more of a spike down a little bit. Maybe some of these miners will dump a little bit of Bitcoin. We'll see a spike down, and then that's it. They're the last people to sell. And then congratulations, we're back in the next bear market. Let's go to 100K.
What I think is also interesting, and I never thought about this before, but, again, these people are super smart, and equally they will have gone through the whole, Bitcoin and the third. But I remember watching a documentary where they had armed guards protecting the Bitcoin mining farm, and ultimately this whole setup. If the average layperson was to see this setup, to think, oh, this is a little bit intense, isn't it? Just for this magical internet money thing. Again, it may just go that step further in orange pilling the normie.
Yeah.
Right, should we end on?
We've got two more.
Oh no, we've got two more. We've got
Shitcoin corner.
Classic shitcoin corner.
So hopefully a quick one. It's just Apple, right? Apple. I think Apple are going to become a problem. So essentially, what they've done is Coinbase have a wallet, and you can't send NFTs on them anymore because on Apple they want a 30% fee for every transfer of money that comes kind of in and out. So for you to be able to purchase an NFT or send it to someone else, they're counting that as a transaction. They're counting that as an in-app purchase, which means they want 30%. So when you send your stick dick worth 40 quid, what Apple want to do is charge 12 quid. So 12 quid of it has to go to Apple. So Coinbase are going, well, we can't obviously do that. So yeah, I think it's going to be really the only reason I put this in. Not only is it kind of funny that you can't fly NFTs around anymore, because it really is a taxable event and it should incur certain fees and blah, blah, blah. So it is going to become a problem. People that are flying these around are going to realize that, oh shit, that ticket that I brought that I'm now moving around and reselling and stuff, guess what? That's an investment. So that's taxable. There's cap gains on all these things. And you can't just do it. It's not like it's a gig ticket that you bought for 100 quid and you can just pass it on and you can make some money off it. Like and the worst thing about it is all trapped on the blockchain as well, probably tied back to your KYC. So you're doing it all out in the open. You might think you're a cat on the internet, but you fucking ain't, mate. I guarantee you've got your KYC tied to one of those wallets. And but yeah, it just shows that Apple they kind of are the gangs, the Gestapo of mobile, aren't they? And most people. So it's going to become a problem. I think with a lot of Bitcoin wallets and Bitcoin apps. They're going to run into Apple a few times. Obviously, I did with Bitcoin lessons. I couldn't give out Bitcoin because they were like, "No, you can't. That's money. We want either our 30% of it," or they just blocked it actually completely. They went, "You can't give anything of value back in your app unless you just pull it. You everything you get paid it has to be worthless what you give back." It's kind of hilarious. Yeah, they can't. So I had to do it outside of the app, and I bodged it through a manual thing where you have to contact me on Twitter and all that. But it's a kind of annoying that Apple just is like, obviously governments are taxing us everywhere, but then the mobile, you think, oh, it's great, I can set up a little business and get going. Well, not only do all the government taxes apply, but Apple are there going just at the gate before you receive any money to pay your real taxes on. We're taking our 30% tax right off the top.
Go on, Dr. 10%. I was
just gonna say, I read this. It was 30% of the gas fee, wasn't it? Not of the overall price.
Oh, the gas fee.
So, in theory, if Ethereum sorts its gas fees out,
there's probably more than the NFT in it.
I was gonna say, if Ethereum actually sort out their gas fees, then it could be 30% of not a lot. But how long have they been meant to be sorting the gas fees out for?
Yeah,
since they launched, and I think about a year after they launched. I mean, they launched it, and there was Ethereum had sub-cent transaction fees, and then 4 people started using it, and it went to $10, and they're like, "Oh, we fixed it.
So maybe it does. It is one of the reasons causing the end of NFTs. Like, they are dwindling on the edge. They haven't got much value. Like we saw with Justin Bieber one, which he bought for $1 million, go down to 70 grand or something. I think
he didn't buy it; he got given it.
Okay, well, given it in terms of value. So I think it does. It is part of the signal of the bottom as well, isn't it? I think this is all I think. Obviously, there could be lots of shit going on, like Coinbase collapses and Kraken and Gemini, then we really do hit a bottom.
Yeah. Well, I'm still, unfortunately, from a personal perspective, I'm still holding out on crypto.com. I think capitulated because everything they were doing or have been doing screams a replica of FTX. You know, they're plastered over the World Cup. They're sponsoring and have sponsored everything moving. And where has this money come from? From their CRO coin, which, again, where is the utility in that? Nowhere to be seen. I'm just very surprised that it hasn't happened sooner, but maybe their cash reserves were a little bit larger and have been able to hold on for a bit longer.
Yeah, and maybe they're not sending it to a sister organisation who are gambling on in a hedge fund.
Exactly. But yeah, I still feel like there's something not quite right to have made all that money in such a short space of time. And equally, the money that they were asking people to deposit and hold, whether or not they can actually transfer that back one-to-one. They don't need to do it immediately, but when the time is right. A stupid question, but going back to the Apple piece, could Lightning not get around this?
No, just purely because, well, I suppose actually the fees are tiny.
Yeah, the fees.
Yeah, but I think it's Apple just in the way, right? They can block stuff. They could just go, we don't like Bitcoin, you know. And
but it's NFTs, so yeah.
Well, we're not. Yeah, but it starts off with NFTs.
Yeah.
And obviously it starts off with anything else. And then they'll see that there's money over there that's left on the table for them. And they'll be like, well, we want a little bit of that too. So, they'll probably encroach on that as well.
Yeah. And just looking at, I totally agree that crypto.com are going to be the next one to go. A year ago, their token was 74 pence a token. And as of today, it is 5 pence.
There you go.
So they have, lost one hell of a lot of money there. So and they'd have done exactly the same thing as FTX, which is just at the peak, which a year ago, that's right at the peak of the bubble, right? That's when they did all those big endorsements. Probably paid for the World Cup a year ago, didn't they? That's when those kind of get endorsements all get signed off. So they can't back out of them. They're already prepaid. And now they're 95% down or something on that token, on their price. And they'll be looking at their balance sheet going, holy shit. And I think their only advantage is they haven't got an Alameda that just blew up all the money on leverage. But I would imagine if there was a bit of a bank run on crypto.com now and people started to withdraw, I would imagine it's a matter of hours until they pause withdrawals, because I don't reckon they have got one-to-one backups on the funds that customers think they have.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the final story of the week?
Last but not least, and we will end on a positive note, which is Brazil and Bitcoin. So ultimately, Bitcoin is now recognized as a legitimate payment method in Brazil. So it is not to the same extent, listeners, to El Salvador, where it has become a legal tender. However, it is something that is recognized, so you can pay for goods and services in the country, which is fantastic, especially because we know that the volatility of the currency in this country has been rife. But equally, it opens up Bitcoin to 214 million individuals in Brazil, should they wish to use it.
So, kind of looking at this on the flip side, this is coming through, what's his name, Bolsonaro, right at the end of his reign. So he's lost the presidency in Brazil. And I think the changing of the government is in January. So this has come right at the end. Is it something which could potentially be knocked back by the party coming in?
Maybe. I guess it depends on whether or not, obviously, if it gets the president's signature, is that indefinite and therefore it can't be unwritten by the new president? Time will tell.
Yeah, well, I think this has been approved.
Okay.
It's still got to go to the Senate, yeah.
Yeah. because that came out on December the 2nd.
And the Senate voted on it. So now they've got 15 days to sign or veto the bill. So it's going to happen in the next 15 days.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it's potentially, it gets signed off and then the new government says we're not having this.
Yeah.
And gets it removed.
And the thing is, it is a little bit wishy-washy, right? I don't really know what this means because I guess Bitcoin in a lot of countries just exists and it isn't either legal or illegal to buy things in Bitcoin. It's just not recognized. It's like going, I'll buy that off you for some bananas. And they're like, well, we're not going to stop you buying stuff with bananas, but the government don't really recognize bananas as a currency and that you can buy stuff in bananas. But this is, I think all it's doing is recognizing going, it is legal to buy stuff in Bitcoin.
It's like Madeira. It's Madeira and what was that city off the north of South America?
Yeah,
the autonomous one. It's basically the same thing. It's just gone. It's a currency. You can accept it if you want to, but you don't have to. That's all it is.
Yeah,
which is a little bit weird, but yeah, it's good.
But it's another one, isn't it? It's a domino effect of, there's been some energy and some thought process that has gone into this that wasn't there previously before for another country, and it's certainly a country of this size to spend time on it and to recognize it in some form.
Yeah. And surprise, it's a country that is not benefiting from the US dollar. So it's a country that is struggling, as always, has had a lot of problems with money and inflation. And surprise, they are the most receptive to Bitcoin. And
it sounds like they need some freedom bombs. They need democracy in their life.
Yeah, they need to have some IMF loans pulled. And
you have to get on the old editing there and drop some freedom bombs like Tim Westwood used to do. That's
a shame. We always want legal tender though. Legal tender is the one because it means it removes all taxes from it when you're buying and selling. It doesn't matter what the price is. The biggest problem with using Bitcoin as a payment is you have to work out the taxes on it. Like, what did you buy it for? What are you now technically selling it for? It's annoying, and you can't do that every day if you're using it as day-to-day money. It's a big overhead that you're going to end up falling foul of, and some government's going to try and put you in prison for tax evasion when you just go and just trying to spend money, dude. Leave me fucking alone. Whereas if you're in El Salvador doing that, you don't have to worry about taxes because they just go, it's legal tender. We don't give a shit what you bought it for. Just spend your Bitcoin. It's tax-free. That's what we want. But Brazil hasn't got that. But according to this, it's a step towards that. But it's a kind of a bit of a missed opportunity to not bundle that in because you can just make it legal tender and not mandate it. You don't have to do El Salvador because El Salvador went, you have to accept Bitcoin now everywhere. You could just do it's legal tender, but you don't have to accept Bitcoin. You can reject it and only ask for fiat, but it's legal tender now. That's a biggie because now it genuinely means that everyone can just go about their day buying and using Bitcoin, and it's a genuine currency. It's at the moment it's legal, but you have to pay taxes on it. It's not really practical to use it every day. It's just not, unless you're using very small amounts that the taxes doesn't really matter.
It is interesting, isn't it, when people get to that level where they are happy to spend, even though it'll be minute divisions of Bitcoin on coffees and so forth, knowing that coffee is actually going to cost them X amount of thousands in the future.
It's the same as you buy it with fiat though, really, because that fiat that you spent could have been Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter. That's the mental trick you play on yourself. You go, oh, my Bitcoin stack's over here, my fiat stack is here, so I spend and buy low time preference bollocks with my fiat. But that's fine because the fiat's going to zero anyway. But in reality, what you should have done is converted all that fiat into Bitcoin and then just spend the Bitcoin. That's the smartest way to play it. So even when you're buying, if you buy a coffee using fiat, you're still missing out on the 100x that you were going to get because that fiat could have been Bitcoin as well. You just didn't do the conversion yet.
Yeah.
So that's why spending Bitcoin's fine. Like once you're all in, it doesn't matter because you just go, well, I got to spend something. I'm all in. So if I'm going to live, I have to spend Bitcoin. I'm on a Bitcoin standard now, by and large. I have to spend Bitcoin quite often because I'm on a Bitcoin standard. I haven't got any fiat to spend, so I have to spend Bitcoin. And I hate it every time. It hurts even more, but it is what it is.
Eventually, we will be there, a full Bitcoin standard. Do you think we'll get to a Bitcoin standard in our lifetimes?
I hope so.
I think so. I just can't see it not collapsing, but it's how long we're on this CBDC standard.
Mm.
I mean, between 2040, 2050, I think that'll be a good time. I think the next 15 years they're going to be rough because we're going to go through the collapse of fiat. And
there's a battle. Yeah, definitely. There's a battle on hand.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's the thing. Like, I'm on a Bitcoin standard now, by and large. You could go to El Salvador, and I could be completely on it. I wouldn't need to convert to fiat all the fucking time, and then spend. I could just go about my day spending Bitcoin. So the way to avoid that 15 years of pain as well is to be on a Bitcoin standard. That is a huge thing, because if you're not, during that 15 years, you're going to get your wealth stolen. You're going to get FTX'd, because as we described, holding your money on FTX, fucking stupid. Holding your money in the current financial system, whether that be a pension, whether it be stocks, whether it be money in a bank account, same thing. They're going to go bust. And when they go bust, the insiders get all the money out that's left out the back, and you're left holding the bag. And guess what? The bag's empty.
The bag's got a big hole in the bottom.
Good way to finish on a positive note. The only thing which I can think about this show is we haven't used the N-word this week.
Oh, fantastic. And on that note, this show has been brought to you by Mr. All-In, aka the $1 Trillion Man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the Excellence of Execution, and she was here, but she's never here, Mrs. No Show. Peace out, you Nazis.
Did not see that coming.